I've got to say that is quite the introduction, and I've got to say that, quite honestly, I am humbled. After listening to a lot of the stuff, I don't think I have any business being up on this stage. After listening to some of these incredibly thought-provoking and just truly inspirational things. I mean, when I heard from Jen what this was about, initially I was told, okay, Ted, technology, entertainment, design. Well, that's a no-brainer. I mean, that is totally F1 to the T. And I thought, okay, great. They're like, but the one in Austin we're doing a little different. It's about community and inspiration. And I'm like, and you want me to talk about that? So I sat and thought, and I think I'm going to kind of change things up. I had something written. I know they're probably going to be squirming over here now because I am literally just going to wing it. Everything that we had thought of with Allie before is not appropriate at all. And so, let me think. Let me try to be profound. Carpe diem, seize the day. Good night. I mean, no, truly. The truth of the matter is I am from Austin. My mother's family has been here since the 20s. Any opportunity that I get to talk about how cool Austin is and how cool something we have in Austin is, I've been doing it my whole life. I've been trying to shout it to the world about that this is the hidden gem. And over the last 20 or 30 years, a lot of people have caught on. I don't know how many native Austinites are actually in this room. Let's see. There we go. Anyway, my background is, in fact, I raced cars for 20 years. My father's side of the family was very involved in World Cup event and IndyCar and Formula One and Trans Am racing, so I've been exposed to it as a kid. But really, when thinking about some of these speakers, I've thought about what's really been inspirational to me to listen to some of this. So, of course, we're going to talk about Formula One for a few minutes and talk about some of the cool things we're going to do with this facility. But I really think back now to a conversation I had with my grandfather fishing on Lake Buchanan when I was 13 years old. And it sounded at the time, I thought he was going wacko, but it was a very simple phrase that I think it sounds like everybody in this audience could relate to. He said to me, Tavo, don't ever judge a man's success by the size of his wallet. Only judge it by the quality of the relationship he has with his family, his friends, and what he does in the community. At 13 years old, a kid, all you're looking at for is trying to figure out who you can go steady with and your dirt bike. I mean, I didn't really understand, and as I've grown up, I realized that those are the things that are important. So when this project started to come about, probably 8 or 10 years ago, when we really thought that it could be a possibility, my partner, Bobby, who's an Austinite as well, we talked about, okay, we realize we're about to embark on something that has never been done in the United States, which is build a full-blown Formula One facility. We've got wonderful racetracks in the United States. I mean, there's no bigger supporter of Indianapolis or Daytona than myself, but it's not to the extreme that we're talking about. And so when we sat down to really analyze what we needed to do, we needed to figure out how is it something that actually benefits the community. Okay, we all know, or if you don't know, there's a lot of positives as far as Formula One. For starters, 500 million people watch the Grand Prix. It's seen live in 180 countries. Is it going to bring jobs? Of course. Is it going to bring 300,000 people over the weekend? Of course. All those things are great. But what happens after it leaves? And yes, we've got it for 10 years. But what happens after it leaves after 10 years? Or what happens after the weekend? Of course we're going to do other motorsport events. But it was really then what slowed us down was the thought process of how do we think outside of the box? How do we think basically beyond the edge of how do we actually make this a multi-purpose facility? Not just something that sounds good on TV or in an interview, but really, how is every single building designed in a way that it can be used 365 days? So I think that we're on the right path. We've started down an education component that I started a Safe and Sober program 20 years ago when one of my dearest friends in high school was killed by a drunk driver. So it's a program that's been going on 20 years that we're going to expand with Cambridge University. We're pretty far down the road with all the university systems, the elementary schools, school districts here. government, trying to come up with curriculum to encourage kids right now, because one of the highest dropout rates of any field is science and engineering in America. So we're trying to use a hook. Many of you know, it's not so much that the message is different, but it's who delivers the message. So the message and the messenger, two different things. Kids today are more impressed with the delivery of the message by the messenger than what the actual message is. And so if we're finding a creative way to keep a hook, have a live test bench facility to where a kid can have some sort of K through 12 education, maybe just using something as simple as a cartoon character that is involved in racing, and then as he gets into high school and then on to elective courses in college and then into an internship at the facility. So that's one thing. That's something that everyone will see being rolled out. So we felt, okay, that's one component that we think is important. What's another component? Kind of the field of dreams. Remember Kevin Costner, that whole idea of you build it, they will come? Well, we kind of said that to ourselves, not really knowing if it would work. And quite honestly, that is what's starting to work. Our whole vision was that when someone is driving down 130, 10 years from now, that they look at the sign that says the blankety-blank complex, next exit, that they say as an afterthought that that's where the Formula One Grand Prix is. It should be, that's the such and such center where they do this kind of innovation, and the manufacturers do this, and there's an education component tying in all the school districts. And that we'll know, if we accomplish that, we know that we would have done our job. Yes, why Austin, right? Well, not only is it because it's our hometown, but it's become abundantly clear that if you were to take a map and just say to someone, sir, tell me where would you put a global sporting event in this hemisphere? Forget the city or the country. Where is it perfectly positioned between both coasts, Canada and Central America? And you'd pick somewhere around Austin. After we decided on that, it was why that part of Austin. Everyone knows Western Travis County has seen all the benefits of basically the splurge and the successes of Central Texas over the last 15 years. Southeast Travis County has actually not enjoyed that. So we could have done this in Western Travis County. We decided to do it in Southeastern Travis County because we personally feel that it's an area of community that needs growth. And why we feel good about that is because of the engineering firms and aeronautical companies that now want to relocate that will soon become public. Those kind of things we think are important for Del Valle. Yes, it's also strategically located close to an airport with a view of downtown, all the things you want to provide for your fans. But that was where we felt our sense of community. So I think that I'm just throwing that in because I started feeling overwhelmed with some of the things that people were talking about and the passion. So now let's get to the fun stuff about Formula One. I mean, if that's what the TED conference is about. For those of you that have moved here over the last 20 years, you've kind of seen the way Austin has emerged as really a tech sector in the United States. Silicon Valley, a couple others, but really Austin has become something that is kind of a phenomenon. Had you said it 25 years ago. And right now there's no single sport in the world that has more cutting-edge technology than Formula One. And what I mean by that is anything that you see in your road car today is stuff that has been developed over the last 35 years. And I mean something as simple as the brake caliper was developed in Formula One. It's becoming now fairly common, and some of us own hybrid cars that have KERS technology, kinetic energy recovery systems. That's all Formula One technology. Right now, the cool stuff that's working behind the scenes in Formula One is algae conversion. Some of you may know in this audience that the algae, they're looking at ways to convert it into electricity to power vehicles as well. Probably 5-10 years away, but what better place than an area that has the largest algae bank in the world, and that's the University of Texas. So from that standpoint, I think that if you talk about performance and being fuel efficient, one of the things that Formula One does is tasks its engineers and trying to figure out how to pull that last ounce of horsepower in the slowest fuel consumption ratio is possible. So if you notice, our cars in the 1960s and 70s weighed 6,000 and 7,000 pounds. Today, cars weigh significantly less. Why? Because of the materials developed in places like Formula One. But even if you're not a Formula One fan, let's forget that. If you're not a Formula One fan and you talk about just the human performance, right? It's really about, it's not how fast a car can go, it's about how fast that person in the car can go. And so in Austin, being an active town, super active town, as we all know, one of the other things that we're doing with this facility is trying to install a human performance lab, which can be as basic and simple as pleasing the city politicians who are tired of our roads being closed every other week with a 5K. Now there's a place to do it where you don't have to close down the city. But truly integrating some of the technology from Formula One with universities who we've been in discussions now with for probably over a year, in figuring out how do we actually have a lab out there. So this isn't a racetrack. We're really trying to do a destination, truly a destination, not a racetrack. So I think that in trying to, you see, I threw them off. They haven't done any slide, and now everything, sorry about this. If someone asks me, what is it that you most are inspired by and what drives you? What made you think of something this crazy? Because it truly is a crazy undertaking. We're building a city. I mean, getting power, water, wastewater, everything out there in such a short period of time. And what drives you, Tavo? And it really for us, and Bobby the same, it's fear of failure. It really is a fear of failure. And so listening to the speaker before me, it was so ironic listening to some of the things that she was saying because it made me think. And that was one of the things that I learned in college. And I read it while I was doing research for my senior thesis. And I'm sure everyone in this room can relate to it. But if I had one message, whether it's that you're a mentor to a child with a learning disability, or whether it's an author or a poet or a scientist or a psychologist or someone that's just trying to make a difference in their little sliver of the universe, such as I am, trying to make a tiny bit of a difference in my sliver. And that is to never be careful. Always go for the edge, right? Because the saying of that we're all multidimensional personalities. And within us, every one of us, lies all the knowledge we ever will need to know. But my mission is to remind you guys and myself that all the power is within our own beings. We just need to recognize how to use it. And so at certain times in life, people can develop and help and teach you, but really all that power is within us. So I know I got a little bit sidetracked. I didn't stick it all to the script, but I think yes, Formula One is cutting edge, but after listening to someone, I really just wanted to express that I'm hopeful that this enormous project that has been getting so much attention in Austin actually does have a long-lasting, profound effect, besides a big economic impact just for the race weekend or a few jobs. So, thank you very much.
Tavo. We're actually a little ahead.
I didn't.
I know, it's okay. It's okay. We're actually a little ahead of time.
Oh, are we?
So
okay.
actually, can we ask you a couple technical things about the thing?
Absolutely.
Because a part of what inspired this actually is when I saw the Statesman article that had the design of the track.
Yeah.
And the description of it, and I got so excited. And D is for design.
Yep.
So if there's one thing that you're most excited about actually in the building a track in 2012, what is it?
Well, I think because of the thought and the area that we got, that we were able to put the land, we got the premier designers in the world for these kind of tracks, but then we didn't want to just hire foreign people, so we hired two Texas-based companies to kind of complement. I think that for the race fans in the audience, if there are any, the most exciting thing is going to be that we're probably going to have the closest thing to a traditional old Grand Prix track from 30 years ago is legally able to be built today, meaning fantastic, fast, high-speed corners with all the modern safety. And I think because we, as Americans, we live in a stadium society for our outdoor events or or arena events. And so this will be one of the few road courses in the United States where you can actually see the vast majority of the track because of the elevation changes. So from that standpoint, from the pure sporting standpoint, it's going to be an awesome track.
Thank you.
Thank you.